I'm Grant Morrison, and this is the Strip Festival at Edinburgh. Guess what I've always enjoyed most in the few years that I've done it is just getting to talk to people and answering questions and having that face-to-face contact. Because most of the time, as a writer, you spend behind a desk, working with a screen and on your own. So it's really nice to just hang out and talk to people and meet your audience face-to-face. I think the strip thing's a great idea. It was always going to be an inevitability because of the rise of graphic novels in the bookstores and the attention that's been given to them over the last decade. So it seemed as if it had to happen, but I'm glad it's finally here. When I first came here 20 years ago, there was just me and Dave McKean talking about Arkham Asylum, and suddenly there's this whole thing happening. So yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's quite exciting. I guess I first got into comics. As a kid, the first thing I read was a Marvel Man comic, where Marvel Man meets Baron Munchausen. So it was the notion of someone who tells lies and a superhero, and I thought that kind of describes the writer's life quite well. So I managed to combine those two things into a career. I guess I just love the comics format because of the combination of pictures and words. I think it's really primal and magical, and it goes back to mankind's earliest kind of attempts to render things symbolically on walls. Suddenly we can do it in comics. We can tell amazing stories about the culture we live in using symbolic figures. What I tend to do is to draw the comic first. So I'll do my little 24 pages of thumbnails and work out all the main visual beats first, and then do the connecting tissue of the story. So for me, it always starts as visuals, and then I've spoken to artists who find it quite odd that I then hand over a verbal description of my drawings to another artist who then reconverts them into visuals. So there's a weird kind of process going on there, but obviously there are a lot of artists who are a million times better than me, and when you get the combination of two minds working together, it's pure magic. Well, there's certain people that I've liked to work with again and again, and once I kind of synchronise with an artist and I realise that he's really good at interpreting my work, I tend to like to work with that artist again. So people like Chris Burnham and Frank Quitely and all the people, Cameron Stewart, I've tended to always work with them again because they really get what I'm trying to say. There's no error in my description and their artistic rendition of it. And what they also do is bring so much more. They'll add things I didn't think of, or they'll come up with new ways of looking at it. And all of those artists, I think what makes them special is that everything they draw is interesting. There are no wasted panels. They make sure that every drawing they do has something behind it and a bit of thought behind it, so I really like that. For me, the superhero thing is just, it comes slightly, I guess, from nostalgia, because those were the comics I grew up with, and they really had meaning for me, and I saw them very much as symbolic figures. For me, it's not about trying to do stories about superheroes being real, because I think that's utterly preposterous. But for me, superheroes are real as imaginative constructs and as cultural objects. So I was kind of always interested in dealing with that and being able to get directly to the source, do things like Superman and Batman, because to me they have big symbolic meaning. And even the fact that these things have become so popular over the last decade in the wider culture shows that they still can carry quite a large, a powerful charge that's worth looking at and it's worth understanding, because it tells us so much about ourselves. Well, my influences have always, I don't read much fiction now, so my influences come from when I was younger. And it was Alan Garner, the fantasy novelist, who was massively inspirational to me, just the way he handled prose, and he only used Anglo-Saxon words. So he did this whole thing about cutting it back to the bone. So I really loved his work. Who else? God, things like Tolkien, Michael Moorcock, fantasy stuff when I was a kid. And then I really, I love James Joyce and I love reading Shakespeare, and I guess I had more inspiration from television dramatists like Dennis Potter and David Rudkin, and a lot of people that really don't get heard about as much as they should these days. Well, I guess I'm always listening to music when I'm writing comics and always have done. So yeah, it's very important to me. I used to include phrases, little snatches of songs I was listening to when I was writing comics, which is why Doom Patrol's filled with Smith's lyrics and bits out of 90s Britpop songs and stuff. So yeah, I'm always listening to music and it kind of informs the work. You know, for Batman, I was just listening to tons and tons of kind of heavy metal, well, not necessarily heavy, things like mindless self-indulgence and things that are a bit more arty metal were going into Batman. So yeah, I mean, it's always the rhythms of the music are informing the rhythms of the comics. Well, right now the only one I can really, we're doing this thing Annihilator with Fraser Irving, which is my next big kind of personal thing. Beyond that, I'm doing something else for Image, and then Sea Guy for Vertigo, which finally completes my trilogy. You know, I'm really pleased about that. That's my thing. So there's that, and plus a bunch of other things that are kind of too early in the planning stages now. But lots of stuff next year will be, you know, new creators work.